Hi, I'm Armando COF, and now I'm going to talk about gun violence in the United States. As you all know, gun violence in the United States is a huge problem as it kills many Americans just on a day-to-day basis. My major claim is that the U.S. does not have a strict enough policy towards gun violence, and that I kind of wish that it was stricter. My justification would be, although that gun ownership has gone down, for the most part, the owners of guns tend to have more guns, and there tends to be a lot more homicides, like per capita. My second major claims would be that although we see a lot of other problems with the United States and other problems such as terrorism, we see that gun-related violence is it has a lot higher death rate than any other problems. Households that tend to have higher gun rates tend to have higher rates of suicides to the teenagers or to even the friends of the teenagers. And then the availability and portrayal of guns in our culture is one of the main reasons for why people tend to want and have more guns. So first on my minor claim, gun violence compared to terrorism, according to Jennifer Macia from an article on Trace, from 2005 to 2015, 71 Americans were killed in terrorist attacks on domestic soil. 301,797 were killed in that same span due to gun violence. And this is not just gun violence from altercations, this is also gun violence from unintentional gun deaths. And that's deaths that were caused by guns, but they were not done with the intention to kill. The U.S. has problems such as this with other altercations, such as driving and the such. But our biggest problem is with guns, as we see some declines in numbers of gun owners, but we do not see a decline in the homicide rate, as we'd like to see with the amount of people that do actually have guns. One of these statistics done by Tom Smith and Jay Sun in trends in gun ownership in the United States from 1971 to 2014, 49% of Americans claimed that they did own guns in 1973. But in 2014, we see a drop of almost 11%, 39.2 that actually claim to have guns in the United States. Although these numbers show a drop in ownership, we do not see a drop as drastically in the amount of gun violence. In 2013, The Atlantic Online compared the murder rates of countries of other countries to that of the U.S. Examples of this include cities such as Phoenix with a murder rate of 10.6, and that can be compared to the entire country of Mexico of a murder rate of 10 people per capita. So for 100,000 people, there were 10 murders in Mexico, compared to that of Phoenix, which was 10.6 people to the 100,000. Next, I'll be talking about the households that do tend to have guns, and how although it is lower, the rate of homicides is still incredibly high. And this can be attributed to a variety of reasons. One of the main reasons is due to the average amount of guns owned by gun owners. According to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the average amount of guns per one owner is 8. So per one owner, there's 8 guns, and that's an average. Of course, there are people that tend to have more, and there's people that tend to have less. But that's a huge problem, because that means that although we see that people are recreational in their guns, they tend to be a specific set of people that do have the guns. This is shown in the amount of people that actually got guns during Black Friday. In 2015, there was a record-setting 185,345 background checks on Black Friday. This was from an article on the Trace, and this is and for the most part, these people it tends to be the same group of people that buy the guns. They see these specials and they buy guns, and they think, well, we should have more guns. This then leads to my next topic of availability and the portrayal of guns in our culture. During the Oregon shooting at Rosenberg, one of the survivors was actually quoted as saying he wanted to have a gun in his house to protect himself. And this is fine, as many people tend to want guns in order to protect themselves. But the problem is that while everyone wants a gun to protect themselves from other people wanting guns, you see more people that tend to have guns and more people that tend to have more guns in order to protect themselves. While instead of protecting themselves, we see a lot higher rate in the crime and a lot higher rates in homicides. And not just for intentional purposes, but also in self-defense and in unintentional gun deaths. I hope you see that all these numbers, such in terms of homicide rates and in terms of altercations that are caused by guns, to show that the United States has not done an adequate job to reduce the violence of our gun crime rate.
All right, Armando, it's a little confusing exactly what the proposition is at the end. Your argument is that we haven't done enough, but you haven't told us what actions we've taken, why those actions have failed, what other actions would have made any particular difference. If your argument is that we have, our actions are insufficient, then you need to have an analysis of what those actions are. All of your argument is about the amount of guns that exist, and I still don't see any information or argument that suggests that the frequency with which people own guns has an impact on their use of guns in violent encounters or situations. In other words, if the person owns one gun, that they are 1/5 as likely to commit a violent crime using a gun as a person who owns 8, 9, or 10 guns. That seems to be the inference that you're making, but I didn't see any data that would suggest that that is the particular case. I don't think there's much argument that there is a lot of gun violence and that we're unhappy about that. But I still don't know what the argument is here. What is it that we're supposed to have done that we haven't done? What is it that we're doing that is causing this particular problem? There is a suggestion in a third point in the preview that availability and portrayal of guns in the culture somehow influences people to act in regard to either owning guns. That I can believe, but not necessarily suggesting that that causes the particular crime statistics that you're talking about. You just feel like it's all over the place. In the body of the speech, data's coming out. There aren't any claims. Sometimes there's a claim, but there's no data. I cannot pick out a structure. It sounded like you had a preview at the beginning of the speech, but they weren't even phrased as claims. It's just kind of like I've got 3 areas that I'm going to be talking about, but I don't know what inferences you're drawing on those points, and that's problematic. You did have some data that you cited in the speech. You gave a few source citations on that data, and I thought that that was pretty reasonable. I'm not sure that it all fits into the arguments that you're making, and like I said, the inferences were particularly difficult to pick out. All right, I got to stop because